Welcome back, everyone. And I hope that you enjoyed that short little stretch and stand break. We're now moving into our differentiated streams. We've got stream 1 with me, which is called What Can I Do in an Emergency? And we have another stream running simultaneously with Donna Luckman called Local Climate Action and How to Get Involved. Now, I understand that there are a few people who are passing on some comments in the chat talking about some difficulties entering stream 2 and some difficulties with some passcodes. And so just to let you know, a few of us are working here in the background to try to make sure that everyone who needs to move across to stream 2 is able to do so. So you may kind of see me looking at my second screen here in the corner, just ensuring that everyone who is able to get across can. Now, I know that we've got John Engelhardt from Moreland, who is also trying to move across. John, could you let us know if you're still stuck with us here in this particular stream? If I don't hear back from you, I will then assume that you have successfully moved across to the other stream. And if there is anybody else who is still here in this stream who is having some difficulties moving across, please let me know in the group chat and I will invite Andrew to help you out if possible. But I will now move on and I will assume that all of us who are still here with me are staying here for this particular session on what can I do in an emergency. And in this session, we're going to be hearing from experienced volunteers and staff from the Victorian Council of Churches, from the SES, from the CFA, and from Fire Rescue Victoria. And they're going to be talking about why they volunteer and why they've chosen to pursue careers in emergency services. They're also going to be sharing with all of us what you can expect if you decide to volunteer or join these organisations, the sort of training that you'll be receiving and what to expect from the role. Now, we've got 4 different organisations who will be sharing their thoughts and their suggestions and their advice with us. We'll be hearing from Bruce Misson from the Victorian Council of Churches, Julie Syme from the SES, Dave Allen from the CFA, and Evan Colburn and Colin Campbell from Fire Rescue Victoria. And so we're going to start this session by hearing from Bruce Misson. Bruce is the Volunteers Operations Officer and Area Coordinator with the Victorian Council of Churches. The Victorian Council of Churches provides training to emergency service workers, council staff and community volunteers on the best ways to support people during an emergency. Bruce lives in Aberfeldy and has volunteered for the Victorian Council of Churches Emergencies Mission for 6 years. He's a member of the St John's Uniting Church in Essendon and sees working in and for the community as an essential element of his Christian life. He's a member of the Moonee Council's Municipal Emergency Management Planning Committee, and he's worked with Hume City Council on emergencies many, many times. And so Bruce will be telling us a little bit about his work. He'll also be discussing how community volunteers can receive training to help out during emergencies, and he'll also be touching on why he does the work that he does, as well as how emergency community support has changed in the last 10 years since Black Saturday. So welcome, Bruce, and over to you.
Good, thanks, Ange. Thank you for the invitation to be with you this morning. I'm on first because I requested that I be on early because I had another function to go to at 1 o'clock in the city. Well, of course, that's been postponed, hasn't it? So I can stay with you for the whole session now. So what does emergencies ministry do in emergencies? Well, our mission is to provide compassion in times of crisis with people affected by emergencies and disasters. A couple of key messages that we would like to get out are that recovery starts the moment the incident affects the person, and early support through psychological first aid is as essential to recovery as medical first aid. And basically our core business is listening and talking. We're not so much out on the front line fighting the fire or whatever, we're supporting the people who've been affected. That's our role in emergencies. I should say that with us being under the Victorian Council of Churches banner, that can be a bit misleading. We are not just a Christian group. We have volunteers from the Muslim, Sikh, Hindu and Buddhist communities, possibly also some of the smaller faiths, but certainly all the major ones. What are some of the sorts of work that we do? Well, you would find us in an emergency relief centre if one needs to be set up, and I have been in several set up by Hume over the years, particularly to do with some of the fires that have occurred in legitimate and not legitimate facilities around Hume. We might be at a recovery information centre where information is being given by the council or others to residents about the impacts of an emergency. And we may just be there to talk to people and just make sure that they're travelling okay. We might be at community information meetings. We can be involved in community outreach door knocks, and I've certainly done several of them in Hume. We might also visit a particular resident where there are particular concerns for their well-being after an emergency. And sometimes we're actually at the site, sometime afterwards. Sometimes people like to go and see the place where things have happened, leave a tribute, that sort of thing. And we will be there to talk to people as they do that and discuss the sort of effect that the incident has had on them. So one of my first incidents that I attended when I first started was at Manor Lakes, where the lady had driven into one of the lakes there with her children, and several of the children died. As you heard, I'm part of the Municipal Emergency Management Planning Committee in Moonee Valley, which is where I live. We're now not an automatic part of that, but we've been invited to be part of that by Moonee Valley. And last year, for the first time, we did some phone support. Many of our volunteers are, like me, retired, and we're probably a quite at-risk group from COVID. So we weren't doing very much face-to-face support last year, but we were involved in phone support for people who were struggling through the lockdown. That was a new bit of work for us. So they asked me to say a little bit about why I'm involved in this. I retired about 7 years ago now, and when I did retire, the minister of my church suggested I look at becoming involved in emergencies ministry. I'm very aware that climate change, which is sort of the banner under which this seminar is happening, will increase the number of natural disasters that we're going to face around the world, but particularly here in Victoria. We saw, a big example of that last year with the fires in early 2020. And I felt that emergencies ministry was a way that I could contribute and offer assistance to the community in those sorts of situations. Not being the most practical of person, but always being happy to talk to people and listen to what they have to say. So how can you be involved? Emergencies ministries will accept anybody who's in good standing with whatever religious community you belong to. And look, if you're not a person of faith, you can still be involved in this sort of work, voluntary work through Red Cross, who often work alongside us and do similar work to us. Training has changed a bit, particularly because of COVID. We're now doing more of it online, so there's a workbook to complete these days, which will probably take you the equivalent of a day, quite a few hours work. And then there is certainly one face-to-face session in which you get more training and some examples of the sorts of conversations that you might become involved in. Emergencies Ministries is very much a volunteer organisation. There are only a handful of paid staff, and some of us, including me, have had some training so that we can take up a real leadership role within the organisation. Because when big things happen, like the fires last year, or the first Burke Street, where we have people on the ground for days and days, it's necessary that some of us take the load off the paid staff, because they can get burnt out if they are trying to do that sort of intensive work for many days in a row. I think that's probably enough for me. There was the question about how things have changed in the 10 years since Black Saturday. Well, I wasn't involved back 10 years ago, but I think one of the key changes has been that all the emergency organisations work together now in a much more cohesive and coordinated way. One of the findings from Black Saturday was that several of the organisations tended to operate in a silo. They operated just doing their own thing and not coordinating very well with some of the other organisations. Now what happens is that one of the professional, and well, that's not quite true of SES, but one of the key emergency organisations, either the police, fire brigade or SES, are the lead organisation, and they direct the rest of us, call us in, whatever needs to happen, and we will work hand in glove with that lead organisation to make sure that the best response is given to the community that we are serving. So I think that's enough from me, and we'll hear from the other organisations, and I'm happy to take questions because I'll be here till the end.
Thank you so much, Bruce. What we might do is we might leave questions until the very end, until after all of our speakers have made their presentations. And I'm very, very glad that you can stay until the very end to join us today. So thank you very much, Bruce, for that. And if you do have questions for Bruce, remember that he'll be here to answer questions once everyone has spoken. It's now my great pleasure to introduce Jules Syme from the SES. She's the Regional Officer of Emergency Management, working with volunteers and councils and other stakeholders. And so, Jewel, welcome, and over to you.
I'm just going to show a presentation. So if the person that's going to conduct it for me can make me small and make the PowerPoint presentation big, I'll actually just turn off my video. I've been invited to come and talk to you about what SES does and how we can best help you prepare yourself and your properties to deal with the effects of floods and storms. So to introduce the SES and what we do and who we are, I'm going to start with a short video. The Victorian State Emergency Service is an emergency service that operates 24/7, 365 days a year. It mainly consists of volunteers who respond to requests from the community and is the lead agency for flood, storm, earthquake, tsunami and landslide. It is also a support agency for Victoria Police, Ambulance Victoria, Fire Rescue Victoria, CFA and DELP. Other areas that we assist in with search and rescue, traffic management, lighting, etc. And that is at its core. It aims to protect life and prevent property loss. Next slide, please. Our primary role is to ensure respond to flood, storms, earthquakes, tsunamis, landslides and sinkholes in Victoria. Next slide. What else do we do? We're also the biggest provider for road rescue in Victoria. We also support other agencies with their response to emergencies. This is in a multitude of different ways, from fire and staging area support, land search and rescue, water rescue, incident management, crime scene protection, traffic management, and much more. Next slide. Our response looks like our service is provided 24/7 to the community. So volunteers from the Victorian State Emergency Service are standing by ready to respond to emergencies and assist their communities 24/7, 365 days a year, not just during an incident, but both before and after, performing different functions such as community engagement, issue warnings, and aiding in relief and recovery efforts. Next slide. Who we work with. So the SES work with numerous agencies and organisations: Victoria Police, Fire Rescue Victoria, Country Fire Authority and Ambulance Victoria being most common. However, we also work with councils, community groups, businesses and other emergency organisations. We engage with the emergency service stakeholders and the community, not just during the time of response, but in ways which help us all to work together towards a common goal. We work together to serve the community and make a positive impact on people's lives in many different situations. Next slide. So flood and storm. I'm just going to now cover some virtual information regarding floods and storm, which is particularly important as currently we've just come out of the La Nina and the prediction was for above average rainfalls across Victoria. So we still have quite a lot of ground saturation through this. Next slide. I'd like to just cover with you when you should actually contact the SES during a flood or a storm. Please note, if there is any danger to life, it is important that you call 000. If that is not the case, but there is a risk of significant damage to your home or damage has already occurred, a tree has fallen and caused structural damage to your home or vehicle, there is damage to your roof or it is leaking significantly, a tree or large branch has fallen and is preventing you from entering or leaving your property, or your property is flooded or about to flood, we ask that you call the SES on the 132 500 number. SES is an emergency response agency and may undertake emergency temporary repairs if required. Depending on your situation, you should contact your insurance company to make a claim or arrange permanent repairs, or contact a professional tradesperson to repair damage or remove debris if required. For minor leaks, superficial damage, removal of debris and cutting down of trees that are still standing, please contact a professional tradesperson, not SES. Next slide, please. There are things that you can do to prepare and stay safe during storms. Park your car under cover where possible and away from trees. Ensure your gutters, downpipes and drains are clear and not blocked. Secure any loose outdoor furniture. Stay away from floodwater, mud and debris, damaged roads and fallen trees. Do not approach fallen power lines under any circumstances. Always assume they're live and call 000 for assistance. Be prepared, stay informed and know your plan. Next slide, please. As we have unfortunately seen in recent times, trees pose an incredible threat to life and property during times of strong wind, especially after heavy rainfall. It is important to be vigilant around trees surrounding your home, or whilst driving during or after a severe weather front has come through. When it comes to preparing for possible floods, lay sandbags at entries to your property, use sandbags to block toilets and all drain holes, lift up furniture and valuables, as well as turning off electricity and gas. And lastly, if warnings have been issued and you're at risk, leave your property early. Next slide, please. Floodwater is a powerful force and there are many unseen dangers. You can't see what lies under the water. Roads can be washed away, bridges can be damaged, and floodwater may contain sewage and debris. So our key message is never drive, ride, or walk through floodwater. Never allow children to play in or near floodwater. If evacuated, do not return until it is safe to do so, and follow the advice of the authorities. Now, the next slide will be a little video again, just a short video about flooding.
Flooding occurs for many reasons, but simply it happens when an area reaches saturation point. This means that the ground is so full of water that it can't soak up any more, so it begins to build up on the surface, or the drains become so full that they have no capacity to take the water away, which will result in flooding. You can learn more about the risk of flooding in your area by downloading your local flood guide by visiting the website below. That's why it's important to know where to source information from and how to prepare your home for floods. Create an emergency plan using ReadyPlan or the Get Prepared app. Check that your home and contents insurance policy is current and includes flood cover. Know your flood evacuation routes. Consider how road closures could affect your ability to leave. Prepare an emergency kit ready with essential items such as first aid kit, non-perishable food, torches, radios, medications and important documentation. Prepare your kit in advance and keep it somewhere you can easily access. Be aware and stay informed. In the event of a major flood or storm, listen to your radio and TV for updates and warnings. Advice and warning messages are issued through websites, smartphone apps, television and radio broadcasts, automated phone messages and posts on social media. When it comes to your property, make sure that the gutters and downpipes can do their jobs by ensuring that they are kept clean and clear. Floodwaters are dangerous. Never drive, walk, play or swim in floodwaters. It takes just 15 centimetres of water to float a car. The water can be deeper than it appears, rise quickly and move fast. Entering floodwater can be life-threatening. And finally, if you find yourself in need of emergency assistance from the SES, simply call 132 500. Your Victoria State Emergency Service is here for you.
So I'll just cover a couple of points regarding the community and their actions around floodwater. A recent survey was actually conducted on 800 properties across 6 townships in the northwestern Victoria, all of which were flood prone. The results found that of the 800 in the high flood risk areas, 80% were not willing to evacuate and 60% said they'd stay if there was a flood and wouldn't leave. 50% said they'd drive through floodwaters at various heights. Most of the willing to drive through were males, and a number of them said that they'd drive through 20 centimetres or more of rapidly flowing water. This shows that the message that it only takes 15 centimetres to float isn't hitting home. So only 59% had flood insurance, even though they were aware that they were in a flood risk area. And 99% of these people had no flood emergency plan. Next slide. So we would like to encourage community members to download the Vic Emergency app. If it is the official Victorian Government app for access to community information and warnings for all types of emergencies in Victoria, and is available in the App Store or on Google Play. Next slide. We want the general public to prepare an emergency plan, as we all know that storms and flooding can happen at any time and with little warning. People who have planned and prepared for emergencies can help to reduce the impact of emergencies on their homes and families, and also recover quicker. You can get a copy of an emergency ready plan via our website or contact Red Cross. Next slide. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you enjoyed this session. I would actually like to end with, if any of this seems interesting to anybody, because obviously SES cover a varied different topics, please contact our website if you would like to join the organisation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jewel, for sharing that information about flood and storm management. And we will have a little bit of time at the end of today's session. So if people want to perhaps ask you any questions about the work that you do and how they can volunteer, it'd be great if you could stay online to answer any of those questions that may come through.
Thanks, Ange.
Jewel.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I'm now very pleased and delighted to invite Dave Allen to join us from the CFA. He's the Manager of Community Safety in the Northwest region. He's responsible for fire prevention planning and community preparedness in that Northwest region, extending from the outer northern outskirts of Melbourne through to Mildura and across to Echuca and Rochester, covering approximately 28% of the state. He's got 45 years experience, both operationally and in fire prevention planning, including in incident management roles in the tragic Ash Wednesday and Black Saturday events. So David, you've obviously got a huge amount of expertise and we're very, very pleased that you can join us. So over to you for your presentation now.
It's a pleasure to be with you all, and it's great to be part of this presentation this morning. First of all, I'd like to just introduce by saying that the CFA is one of the three major fire services in Victoria. First of all, we have Forest Fire Management, who deals with primarily the bush environment, Crown land, public land, and parks, etc. We then have Fire Rescue Victoria. Fire Rescue Victoria was born and bred last year as part of the Fire Services reform, and it brought together both the Metropolitan Fire Service, or the Metropolitan Fire Brigade, MFB in the past, and major centres of CFA across Victoria. So the major locations across Victoria, the major cities, to form Fire Rescue Victoria, and CFA, which is primarily a Victorian volunteer fire service across Victoria. I'll ask for the next slide, please. So who is CFA? CFA is the Victorian Volunteer Fire Service operating across the state to reduce the occurrence and impact of fire and other emergencies. 1,200 volunteer fire brigades are right across Victoria, from little tin shed fire brigades in the remote rural areas through to quite some significant urban areas all over Victoria, some quite significant communities. 54,000 volunteers make up CFA, 54,000 people who donate their time to come together to support the community at times both of preparedness and prevention, but also in an operational sense. And 34,000 of those are operationally trained to actually deal with the emergencies that can and do occur across the state. They're supported by 845 staff, so 845 people like myself who support CFA brigades across Victoria in that role. We service 4 million Victorians across Victoria, and we cover some 224,000 kilometres, quite a significant part of Victoria. Next slide, thanks, Andrew. So to discuss what CFA does, we have a vision. The vision of the CFA is to ensure that we prepare the community, and make safe the community of Victoria from fire. And obviously that flows onto our mission, is to protect lives and property. That's our fundamental mission, to make sure that we're able to do everything we can to actually protect primarily life, but also then property. And our values relate to the safety. Our safety of our crews and our people is number one, and the safety of our community. Working in a team environment, being adaptable with integrity and respect. And as I said earlier, we work in conjunction with our other emergency services, particularly our other fire emergency services, but also with SES, Victoria Police, and other agencies to ensure that we work cooperatively as one unit, as one response to an emergency. Thank you. Next slide. So what does CFA actually provide in regards to its actual operational activity? So we do wildfire suppression. So that's actually out fighting grass fires, bush fires, scrub fires, whatever it might be, in the area that we serve, plus supporting our other agencies. We do structural fires protection or fire suppression. That's obviously building fires, shed fires, etc., of a structural nature. We do transport-related incidents. So that may be overturned tankers or car incidents of any sort on our roads. We actually do road rescue in conjunction with our SES colleagues. So the state is divided up into certain parcels of land where actually either SES or CFA or FRV do road rescue activity. Trench rescue, high angle rescue. So it may be on cliff faces or on places where people may get trapped in high areas, or conversely in trenches, which may be where they've been collapsed in an industrial accident or trench rescue. Hazmat, hazardous chemical, hazardous material spills, hazardous material incidents, we work on that. We have forestry industry brigades, which are brigades that are in and about areas of forested areas. So they actually work where there may be some timber cutting areas, where there may be some areas where there's forestry work, that we support our forest fire management colleagues with actually forming a fire brigade. And we support our other agencies, including, as I said there, SES. Next slide, thank you. But we also do an enormous amount in the prevention space. So community awareness is paramount. That's one of the teams I lead, which is actually advising the community on what they can do to prepare themselves from a fire perspective, whatever that fire risk may be. We work with fire safety planning, so working with municipalities, and all the municipalities that are listed here which have CFA jurisdiction. They'll see one of my team or myself attend meetings to talk about how we can actually make a safer community moving forward. And that flows on to fire prevention and work that we do as well. Land use planning, we are a referral authority under the state planning legislation with regard to growth and development or future development in growing areas, so that it may be that we look at where future growth should be directed, so we're not today putting people at risk for tomorrow, so that we're actually moving our communities into safer areas rather than actually putting new communities into high bushfire risk areas, which in years to come will cause significant problems. We provide technical advice to landowners, to people developing or people who are building a home in the rural areas, how to make their home safe from fire and how to ensure that they do all they can to reduce the likelihood and consequence of fire. Vegetation management is a key part of what we're aiming to get more involved in. And I think it's important to note that a number of the findings out of Black Saturday and Royal Commissions from last year's fires, etc., all are indicating we need to do more in this space as a society. And it was great to hear Uncle Dave talking before about the use of fire in the natural environment and for our benefit of our cultural heritage. And we CFA are learning in that space. And we have a cultural advisor that's working with people like Uncle Dave and our Aboriginal communities to learn the skills that they have and to advance that into how we do our work to support fuel reduction and fire management. So fuel management burnings are part of that, and sustainable fire management planning. So planning for the future for a safer for communities. Thank you. Next slide, thanks. The only other thing we'll make comment on is the climate change issue. And we know that the theme of this seminar is about climate change. And yes, the fire season that we know where we do have significant fire risk is becoming longer. And if I look at part of my patch in the Mallee, it would still probably burn now, and we're in winter, where the normal in fire seasons in years gone by were the short summer season, maybe from October through to February, March. Climate change has changed all that. And so the fire season is longer, it's drier, and it's hotter. There's more erratic fire behaviour, which obviously leads to increased potential danger, increased potential losses. So climate change is a significant problem for our survival from fire, and we need to do more in that space, learn more about that in that space, but also more in prevention. So what can we all do as part of joining CFA? CFA, as I said, is a volunteer organisation now, and many of the many of the towns that some people may be on here today listening to will have a local CFA brigade station. And most CFA volunteers attend on a Sunday morning. They go down at the fire station on the Sunday morning. You'll see the doors open and the vehicles being serviced and being checked. That's the time to call in and say hello and certainly offer your services. You can also contact our regional offices, particularly where this link is for. Our regional office is at Melton, and certainly welcome to contact there and speak to one of our people to find out the best local contact. When people join CFA, they're given a whole range of training to meet the needs of all those issues that we may attend to, whether it be operational, whether it be attending fires or activities of prevention, whether it be helping with fuel reduction, in engagement, in education. So it's a great organisation. As I said, I joined it when I was only a young boy, and I've been there a long, long time. And it's putting back into the community. It is working with others, working with our sister agencies to make a better community and a safer community. So I might just ask Andrew if he could play the video, which will outline what we've talked about and hopefully show some CFA what it does.
I was only walking through your neighborhood, saw you light on honey in the cold. I stood anywhere I go, there you are. Anywhere I go, there you are. I've been getting used to waking up with you. I've been getting used to waking up here. Anywhere I go, there you are. There you are. There you are. There you are. You're the fire and the flood, and I always feel you in my blood. Everything is fine. Boy, when you know, you'll know, and I know. You're the fire and the flood, and I always feel you in my blood. Everything is fine with your hands resting next to mine, next to mine. You're the fire and the flood.
Thank you, Ange.
Thank you so much, Dave, for sharing your presentation with us and that video. Lots of very useful and practical information there about what we can do in terms of fire prevention and how we can get involved if we're interested with the CFA. It's now my great pleasure to introduce Evan Colburn and Colin Campbell from Fire Rescue Victoria, who'll be sharing a little bit of information about the work that their organisation does. Over to you, Evan and Colin. Thank you.
G'day, everybody. I'll be presenting on behalf of FAV today. My name's firefighter Evan Colburn. Can I just give you a little bit of a spiel about more so the career side of being a firefighter? You can see the CFA there have just given a great presentation on what firefighting and the role of a firefighter generally undertakes. But in FRV, we're a relatively new organisation. We only formed last year as of July 1st. we come though from some pretty historic roots, being some career firefighters that were formerly employees of the CFA in the regional centres. I was one of those, and from the 100-year service that was the MFB ceased to exist on that day, and the formation of FRB. So again, the CFA just provided us actually a fantastic presentation on everything that the firefighters do more so. However, from an FRV perspective, we are more focused into the metropolitan environment. So our regional centres and the metropolitan district and the communities around the fringes of Melbourne. We roughly run a perimeter from the Melbourne CBD of about 20 kilometre, if you were to draw an arcing radius there around the metropolitan district. So we've got stations from, say, Rosebud down on the Mornington Peninsula, the entire area of Geelong, out through to our communities out in Warrnambool, Portland, as far up as Mildura. So we do all the exact same incident response. We have the legislated responsibility for undertaking hazardous materials response in an incident, road crash rescue, firefighting in all the various formats. We also support both the CFA and forest fire management. Then we go on to the technical operations, where we're talking again as the high angle rescues, or what we call our heart teams, our trench rescues, confined space, because as you can imagine, within the areas that we work within, for those that know, say the Altona refinery precinct, there's lots of various little issues down in those parts of the world that we deal with, but those sorts of same setups, the manufacturing and production, right through the Dandenongs and right through our regional spaces in Victoria and right Shepparton, etc. However, from a career aspect, where we differentiate, myself, I've been a member of the fire service in a professional capacity now for about 6 years. Colin, who's also online, has been in for 32 years now, and we also have Owen Butler online as well with us, and Owen's been around a little bit longer again. So I'm the new kid on the block and learning the ropes from these people that I've got around me. So coming back to an incident response, that actually only makes up a little part of our day. So we all then move into different aspects of the role where we're undertaking community engagement through activities like this, coming out and speaking with community. Colin's been a multicultural community liaison officer, dealing heavily with the migrant communities, etc., for about 20 years now. Owen, I forget, has been in there for a considerable amount of time as well. But then we have our specialist fields. One of my other specialties is I deal with the firebombing aircraft during the summer fire danger period. So I'll respond all around the state with the aircraft once they're dispatched to an incident. So we then move into fire safety messaging. So when we're on a fire station, we get out there and we discuss with elderly residents, migrant communities, through to kindergarten, schools, teaching all the principles of fire safety, etc. So roughly, for those that are considering a career in the fire services here in Victoria, if you're worried that all we do all day is running into burning buildings, etc., it's only about 20% of our time. We do a lot of time, whether it be training and community engagement, etc. I've very fortunately timed for this conference to be online at the moment. We're actually holding for the first time applications for Fire Rescue Victoria for new employees. The application period is going to be open from the 22nd to the 28th of June for anybody that's interested. And we'll be, so that's just a window there. And if we can put up into there, Andrew, I believe you might have some data in the chat group there. I'm not too sure where you've placed that one. But there are some contact details there for the website, which is simply just firefighter, oops, pardon me, should have got that better, firefighter.vic.gov.au. And if you head to that website, thought that we didn't want to bombard you today with sort of presentations if you're not overly interested in joining us. But for those that are, head to the website there. You'll see a few videos online and all the information about the process. It's a fairly lengthy process involved in the application, but as I said, it's the very first time that we're going to actually run it under the FRV banner. So it's pretty special time. So yeah, firefighter.vic.gov.au and follow the process through there. Alternatively to thrown up into the chat group there now is the email addresses for both Colin and myself. We're going to hang around at the end of it if anybody'd like to ask us some questions further about the role, etc., of what we do and what it looks like, or just my personal feelings on being a firefighter. I can quite openly say that I love it and it's the best job in the world. I've worked in many different fields, but this is by far where I'm certainly going to see out the rest of my days. But yeah, we're more than happy to hang around till the end of the presentation. We'll answer some questions if anyone's got any, but more than happy to take any questions offline if you think about it later. And so our email addresses are both there. Other than that, I think that's pretty much good for us from Fire Rescue.
Thank you so much, Evan, and it's lovely to see your face, Colin. I'm sure that people may have some questions that they may wish to ask now that you're here with us and on the line. I am mindful that it's now gone at 12:15 and that participants from Stream 2 are now joining us back here in Stream 1. So nice to welcome everyone from Stream 2 back to us. We're just wrapping up here with Stream number 1. And I am just very mindful that we haven't yet had an opportunity to ask questions of any of our presenters. So if there are people who would like to stay on the line and who would like to ask questions of any of the presenters that we've had so far this morning, whether it be from Bruce, from the Victorian Council of Churches, to ask questions of Julie from SES, from Dave Allen of the CFA, or for Evan and Colin from Fire Rescue Victoria, please do hang on the line. However, we also invite you to take a short break now if you wish. So if you don't have any questions to ask, now is your opportunity to pop out and grab some lunch. What we'd like everyone to do, if possible, is that when you head out for lunch, if you can prepare your lunch and then bring it back to your desks, because at 12:30, we're going to be screening another documentary called Beyond the Burning. And so what we'd really love you to do is to have your lunch there in front of you, where you can take your time to sit back and enjoy eating your meal whilst settled in front of your screen and watching the film. So please remember that the film starts at 12:30, and so we look forward to seeing you back then. So if you wish to pop out and grab your lunch, do so now. However, if you do have any questions for any of our presenters today, now is your opportunity to pop them into the group chat, and I will then ask those questions that come through to any of our presenters. And I do have a question from Edgar, which says, is the movie at 12:30 kid friendly? I can't recall if it's a PG rated film, Edgar, but it certainly does talk about some of the impacts of bushfires on local communities. I don't think it is particularly graphic, so I think it would be okay, but I might also just check with Liz as well, just so she can confirm my recollection of the movie there. But in the meantime, I might just also ask, do we have any other questions from our participants about joining any of these organisations, either as a volunteer or perhaps thinking about a career with Fire Rescue Victoria? And I might just wait a few more moments just to see if we have any more questions that come through on the group chat. And I must say, it does seem a little bit quiet, but I might just wait a few more moments just in case we do have any shy people who are still typing their responses. So this is a question for all presenters. And so this is a question from Matt Smith from the city of Whittlesea. And this is something that you may want to think about responding to, and whoever wishes to start first may. So you all touched upon community engagement to some extent. And I'm wondering where climate change sits within that in terms of making people aware of the increasing frequency of emergency events, especially for our vulnerable residents. So it's really thinking about, you know, making everyone in our community aware of how climate change is having an impact on the frequency of emergency events and communicating that information to members of our community. So is there anyone who would like to respond to that question? Thanks, David. Over to you.
Thanks. I'm happy to respond. Thank you for the question. Certainly, as I said earlier in our presentation, the length and the degree or severity of particularly fire seasons is increasing, and so we're trying to ensure our communities that we serve understand that and respect that, and prepare for it even earlier, and so that it's not just, as I said, just the normal old summer duration, but it could be right through a longer duration period, and that the severity of it could be more. And so certainly we're trying to ensure that the communities are more informed, a greater engagement campaign, whether that be in schools, whether that be in various groups within the community, various age groups, and multicultural communities, which, and I see Colin on today, who's a leader in that from a fire rescue point of view, working together to make sure that the communities understand that we are entering quite more severe climatic conditions, and potentially emergency can be and are more severe. So thank you.
Thanks so much, David. Is there anyone else who would like to respond to that question as well?
I'll jump in now for that one a little bit. Thanks, Dave. For those who don't know, so multicultural liaison, community engagement, done a lot of work with Dave's team, and along what he's saying, one of the things we reinforce since Black Saturday, the amount we lost during Black Saturday, we lose that many in house fires over the year, nearly every year, unfortunately. So where we can push messaging, especially in the multicultural and diverse communities who are a little bit afraid of our uniforms, we work strongly in that, where we can then push that, you know, these days we don't have bushfires for 10 to 12 weeks a year. We have them going for nearly 6 months at some stages. And as Dave said earlier, get outside of the metro area and you can still have those currently now. So if we can work, we work jointly, we work strongly to promote that every chance we get. COVID has killed a lot of that, unfortunately, because a lot of the multicultural communities are not really tech savvy. They're a little bit like us old firefighters. We rely on others to do all of the work and pray it gets through. But yeah, while I got you, the other thing I've always got to push, make sure you're changing your batteries in your smoke alarm, and make sure you're testing it once a month, because they're the things that are going to wake you up and save your life if you're asleep when you have a fire.
Very wise advice there, Colin. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to respond or comment to that particular question about community engagement? Or do we feel that most others have now, that you know, for example, that Dave and Colin have had an adequate job in responding to that? I'm seeing a few nods there. All right, great. I'll just kind of do one final check. Are there any other questions that we would like to ask of these community organisations? And I don't sense that any more questions are coming through at this stage, so I think we might wrap it there. So thank you very, very much to Bruce Misson from the Victorian Council of Churches for joining us. Thank you to Julie Syme from the SES. Thanks to Dave Allen from the CFA, and thanks to Sam Webb, Evan Colburn, and the last of our speakers, who was, I'm sorry, there was another speaker also who joined us from Fire Rescue Victoria. But thank you to all of you for joining us today. I'm sure that everyone has found the information that you've shared with us incredibly useful and valuable. It's now time for us to take a bit of a short break, and we'll be back here online at 12:30. So see everyone then.